Hello, everyone. My name is Yuta Jazz, and we are going to come back with another episode of the Occult Saga podcast. Um, yeah, have like a weird wave of energy, so I just, I felt like why not? Let's get into it. I was kind of planning on having a break though, and it's kind of like, no, do an episode and do one that's kind of also not easy to pinpoint, just like Light and Dark was, which will continue it on to getting into the gray, but and there's some other bits I want to get into besides that in one episode, but we are going to continue with the idea of natural law and order because there is a natural law and order behind things, and it works in a few different ways. And I don't know, a lot of people that are either thinking they're better than God or thinking they are, all powerful and seeming and or maybe just in their own right as scientists to explore whatever possibilities there are. They don't care much for law and order. I'm not saying everyone is like that. I'm just saying there is a group of people in general that is like that. At the same time, you could argue that throughout a long enough time period in existence, certain souls just kind of explore the possibilities of the limitations they can break within creation or the bounds that they can surpass within exploration of different sorts, within different dynamics, within different dimensions, within different sciences across all of existence. The thing is, like, there's been many different civilizations, there's been different many universes and dimensions, and there's also been many different beings of different stature, besides God in general, right? That have plenty of power, or have options in power, I want to say. And they just kind of like said, fuck it to the rules to the extent of literally kind of pushing on the bounds of normalcy and natural order and law. And natural order and law is basically the parameters of reality in different places that is necessary, that it's absolute. You have to have it so reality has cohesion, so consciousness has matter. It doesn't get like basically warped out like if you put it in a blender or a black hole or something, right? It stays solid, it stays functional and together, and it's basically the parameters of by law that everything and everyone needs to function, so everything and everyone has place in creation and the universe. So nothing is being drained, nothing has black holes in it, nothing has, I guess, this like absolute spiral of chaos and disorder that just eats everything up. You can't go against natural law and order. If you try, either you die or your success creates the death of everything else. And there's been many realities where that's been surpassed or created or achieved in a multitude of different ways. Science has been like the most interesting thing to explore, period, besides, I guess, magic and faith is kind of like the pinnacle of existence a lot of the time. If you have like certain dimensions and you have a variety behind them, right? Like the science behind consciousness and magic is really where it's at because that's a bit more infinite and you can create so many things and it doesn't need contraptions that are literally tethered by the point of that reality and the idea of how it should, I guess, function or is supposed to function. I guess you can see what I mean just by imagining like this world as a scientific world only with no magic whatsoever, and imagining this world with the possibility of it having magic and maybe then eventually advancing it where both meet and then kaboom and we have like a whole different experience of life where ultimately where we're heading, how that's going to appear or happen is like a whole different subject matter, and it really requires us to have a certain level of awareness or consciousness or just openness to that because it needs to come from us, just how like the achievements of either science have come from us and also how, faith has come from us, but also how those can be very much misshaped and toxic, just as we can be misshaped and toxic, and how we treat reality, the world, each other, ourselves, everything, right? Um, but yeah, natural law and order basically doesn't allow you to rip apart like the fabric of existence, reality, and space besides the rules of what it's been made by or from, like for or from. You can't rip apart those parameters in reality to have your own, let's say, new game that goes against life in whole or in total. So a part of it would be like, I guess one example I have is let's say you, I don't know, you use a particle collider to literally break a fucking hole in the wall in between of dimensions to try and skip ascension basically, but all that you do really is make this weird black hole thread go on infinity, right? And then everything just mushes back together, and also you like literally alt F4 this whole fucking experience. Like the third dimensional reality as we know on Earth is gone in a moment like that, and everyone has like this weird psychosis death experience from it where everyone's a little bit fucking wonky and loony and they haven't finished their own experience properly, right? That's not necessarily allowed. Like, yeah, there's going to be things that are in place to try and have it in a certain way and parameter that's going to be healthy for everyone. There's going to be timelines and parallel universes where you can have certain types of like cosmic holes made or physical breaks created that ultimately maybe expands scientific knowledge or awareness or maybe provides the general like public some weird experimental thoughts like exercise that really brings home some understandings, but ultimately, it's not really going to allow everything to collapse on itself just because some scientists thought that they were going to literally ascend to, I don't know, the freaking existence of God through it, while using everyone else as like a battery for it or just annihilating their purpose behind it. There's going to be certain things in place that are going to block it, and certain realities are made to experience those limitations being broken apart, and other realities are actually just completely limited in how much they can go behind in terms of natural law. So let's say this is like, I don't know, the millionth time we are exploring science, right? We aren't going to actually create all of the other issues we had coming up to this point because we had all of these other realities coming up to this point to create those mistakes. And there's been a lot of mistakes in science. Oh, believe me, if you like have the ability to go through past lives and visit certain dimensions and realities, especially even the ones that you're not really, you don't have like conscious awareness of or you haven't been in personally, you will see that every single time someone has pushed the bounds, either in magics or science or in being a divine leader of God of some sort, right? Where they are kind of like a creator in their own right, experimenting and creating whatever they can, and then they get ahead of themselves and do a whoopsie like a baby. You will see that there was not a lot of fun happening there. It was very much oppressive, hierarchical. People were losing their goddamn minds. Nothing was functioning as it had to, and there was mutations, mutations on top of mutations on top of mutations. When it comes to basic physics and how reality works, there was mutations within biological beings or just the physical incarnations or like I guess in general any type of incarnations of beings. I don't know what other incarnations we have, but I guess not all of them are physical. Uh, I don't know. You questioned that yourself. I I know there's multiple different types, but I was kind of trying to put it just to the 3D slash the physical possibilities of things, but I digress. So yeah, mutations in the physical world of how certain parameters work, mutations within beings, their incarnations, mutations even within soul parameters, but that needs a really big whoopsie. That needs like a really big explosion or a really big malfunction of a reality in whole. Like it has to be basically like a moment of a certain pinnacle within the existence of that consciousness or that world. And instead of that pinnacle going the good way, it was kind of like an investment from every and all sides, i.e., the incarnations, the excarnate parts, and also whatever like physicalities go behind that, or the different parameters of like spirit and let's say the world itself, right? Just having this boiling point where nothing can be done. You can't abort it, and you just have to like let it all collide. You just need to have it all come together and have this huge crash. And that basically is literally how we can imagine horrific things happening from like nuclear explosions or humongous other types of explosions that go wrong, not the nice natural ones that bring life, right? Even though they might destroy shit, but the ones that literally like poke holes in space and fabric and different aspects of reality or creation. So there's a lot of stuff that has been patched out and past, basically. There's a lot of stuff that just happened that everyone was like, yeah, okay, let's not have that happen again. Just make it stop. Let's not have it happen again. So there's a lot of stuff in place to keep reality going as fluidly as possible, but there's also a lot of stuff that isn't accounted for. It's just harder to play with as well. It's kind of like the button you can't press, but it is somewhere in general creation or reality, and only certain beings could press it, but even they don't want to really press it. It's kind of like I don't know. I guess you could say like gods going into places that are uninhabited, but they don't go to anyway, because they're like, just let life naturally occur as it has to, and then let it like evolve through those beings and everything else we've already learned. Let's just not loop on it, especially if it was like unnecessary or tragic, or it made everything implode on itself and create a lot of like trauma. The thing is, beings new or young as they are born, they don't really know about that. They don't have experiences of that. They might have like this precursor because they got born from a certain traumatic experience in creation or eternity, right? But they don't really understand it. It's kind of like having a genetic predisposition to being ultra either violent or having a superb talent in either law or science or something else or like human behavior, right? Or having maybe some type of like alternative like behavioral traits because of your genetic tree, or because of like where you are a boiling point within your family genetics and all of that jazz. Um, you aren't gonna know what the hell happened unless you have like this whole educational thing about your whole family, right? But how far does it go? What have you experienced? What is the lineage, right? You can keep track of certain things, but you can't keep track of everything. And because like a lot of the woo-woo stuff is just too woo-woo to begin with, and it doesn't, even if you get into faith and supernatural stuff and the paranormal and whatever, it's not really explored in the possibility or the realms of like hyper consciousness and awareness and how that like plays in with the actual physics of reality. There's not a lot of proof there, which also like discontinues its validity or belief in it that could actually be helpful in science and making strides and creating like some really next level shit, but also in the conscious awareness of like the morality or the ethics behind it that is necessary. Um, but there's a lot of hidden knowledge and truths there that have been one experienced in other worlds, two are literally kind of like passed down to here, to Earth, to us, to be experienced and expressed in a different way, even though we're quite early on that journey, right? Technology only really now has achieved a certain pinnacle where we can say, like, it's safe, it's good, it can get out of hand, but mostly it's like evolving everyone to a different point. So, natural law and order is kind of a really important thing when it comes to existence in many points, science especially, because science likes to make strides ignoring morality and ethics at a lot of points. Honestly, right now we've gotten to a point where there's like a code of conduct of things, but it can go kind of sideways at any point. Um, if you disagree with me, I'm sorry, you need a history checkup just to see like where we got the best of our discoveries from and what has been the recent history of science and why these regulations came into view to begin with. The point that science always is against or fighting with ethics and morality is just fact, and some would argue we couldn't have like the discoveries we need from science otherwise, which at some points of history is true. At some points it's not even worth it, is kind of like the necessary argument that no one really follows. I'm not anti-science, I'm pro-science. I just really want there to not be an accidental misstep in how we're using it, if you're at all curious, because I feel like I might be making some people angry and some people thinking like, "Hey, you're against science. What the fuck?" It's like, no, 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 no. You misunderstood. I love science. I just hate when it's being pushed so far that it literally goes against human nature in terms of like morality, ethics, or just even against the fucking planet. That's dangerous shit. How the fuck are we gonna evolve into our great heights, especially on the scientific side of things, if we ignore the rules of natural law and order, which are there to literally keep us alive and to still progress science in the right direction without us creating something that is literally gonna annihilate us or is going to like make us lose our humanity basically and make us embody a version of us that is scary. It's terrifying, you know? Like I'm all up for certain things to happen. I just don't want them to be so detrimental to ignore the point of humanity. And humanity is like the common thread here that is necessary for those achievements and is necessary for the great heights to be really realized and felt. We need to experience them, we need to feel them, but we also need to do it without being ignorant. So science is like the easiest way to use that natural law and order thing for, because that's like the premise and where it practically can get broken the most. But it can happen also in the spiritual realm. It can also happen in how people treat each other, right? Using different tools like either science or war or other aspects. And it is literally, in terms of spirit, it's kind of like it's stopping natural order and flow behind the evolution of divinity. So let's say, I don't know, I guess you could say like destiny swapping, because everyone's destiny is unique and it's divine and it's ordained for that reason that they need to realize that they're the best point to experience it and they are the best to bring it to light with all of the nuances of either what are the cons or the like pros of it. If if you have your own fate and destiny, it's because you're the best for it. You're the best suited person for it, regardless of your mistakes or successes or other aspects. And destiny swapping is another way of going behind the natural law and order of things. There's a certain point you can do it to that's going to still abide by it, but be, if you go like for a really long ass time, putting someone down and trying to claim their existence, their likeness, their reality, their energy, right? Or even just like using them like a battery for yourself and draining the ever living fucking fuck out of them, you are literally going against natural order and law because div by divine order, by divine law, and by the, ordainance of just them being fucking born, you are taking away what is God-given and necessary for reality to evolve. Yeah, there's room within existence and creation for war, oppression, trauma, karma, and thievery and all the other stuff, but like there's bounds in how it can be done to learn from, and there's bounds of where it is just absolute tyranny that is beyond being cancerous. It is baseless, it's formless, it's graceless. It is literally just like an obstruction of life. It's an obstruction of creation. It's an obstruction of eternity. And you're basically like draining yourself of your life because you're not embodying your point of existence and who you are in eternity and your divine law of your life, right? And you're also trying to destiny swap or completely take the role of someone else or to drain them of their life and likeness so you can keep yourself going in the wrong direction, keep yourself alive in the most toxic place that isn't even good for you, do it in a toxic way that is also cancerous and eating apart them and you at the same time, and probably a lot of other things around you. There's certain realms that are built upon that and have, like this void space purpose, and we need them for a reason, but there's a lot of beings that aren't from there, aren't like that, but they do those things in life in aspects of actual creation where it's not like the in between nothingness, right? And they try and keep going on being like these empty, graceless vessels that are void of life while draining other things. So that's one way. Um, I guess another way would be literally going against the natural order and law of like God, um, source. I don't know, unity of all, whatever you imagine to be like the everything of everything, right? And everything of everything still has like room in it for, as I said, oppression and darkness and other things. But there's a level where it's still life and it's learning and it's evolution and development of some sort, and you can do a lot of mistakes until it's an obvious sign that something is just demented insane or something is literally it's lost all rhyme and reason in life and has just chosen something that is going against it over and over and over again. There's also plenty of beings that literally are like, I'm gonna be the one and all God, and I'm going to take control and I'm going to oppress everything. And they see it and view it in a way where they drain life, where they take life, they don't give life. Whereas consciousness and creation, the God behind it all, or the source behind it all, and everything behind it is giving life to it. It's keeping the machine going. It's keeping the experience going. It's living life, right? So that's the general like basis of the difference behind there. Just because you can play around with something doesn't mean you should. Just because you can break the rules of existence and, or continuity as it's supposed to be flowing doesn't mean you should. Um, there's many other ways of how I guess like this can be done or experienced, but primarily it's going against life. The natural order and law of things is how life is maintained. It's kind of like a sanctified rhyme and reason behind its cohesive existence and its point of like just being, and it cannot be broken. It's always there. It's always going to be there. Nothing can really go against it, even though it tries and it does it. And there's only gonna be examples of how it goes and happens and then fucking, dies on its own accord or literally creates like this evident experience of death or undoing or unraveling or a mistake that everyone can learn from and remember. It's kind of like if it adds code to life, sure. If it doesn't add code to life, no. It's not going to have any basis. And the repercussions of times in creation when beings and people and gods and whatever have went against natural law and order has been like so freaking terrifyingly evident and just traumatizing because that's occurred quite a few times. It's kind of like it's become a stronger order over time because of it. Everything in creation has its point and purpose and its natural flow. Everything has its own rules because of it as well that cannot be broken. You can't. It's kind of like what if you could break out of a video game and see the code behind it? We as people can obviously go out of the freaking video game and look at the code, right? But if you are a person or a thing existing within a realm, or dimension or a world or life, right? You can't go out of it. Not in the same way. Um, you can go out of it with different aspects of your consciousness, looking at things in different ways from different perspectives, right? But you having a certain experience, like breaking through as that experience to just then take control of everything is kind of like trying to become an all-consuming virus at that point. It's kind of like in chemistry and physics, right? There's only certain ways of how certain transformations happen, how certain chemicals or points or physical properties can be achieved, right? There's always going to be new realizations of how that can happen, but there's also going to be ways of how it shouldn't be done or can't happen. Um, Magix has plenty of lore behind that too. It's weird how we as humans, although we don't really have faith in like magic and spirituality and other things, we still have an understanding that certain things should not be fucked with, and we should not find out what the fuck it is. Like necromancy is usually quite discouraged, and just the idea of like trying to bring someone back from the dead is a whole big no-no. I guess in science it's also a thing, right? Because you can't account for the soul. It's usually said if there wasn't a soul, maybe you could bring someone back. But then again, even then, we still somehow have this weird understanding that like it's not gonna be the same person. It's not gonna work that way. In magics, there's plenty of examples of, you know, hypotheticals and anecdotal literature and other stuff and certain like tales and myths and legends that like it just doesn't work and you shouldn't go against that, yet still people do that. Same goes for immortality. You can't break the bank. That's the whole point of the fucking game. um I don't know. There's just like, oh, I guess time and how it has to flow by certain laws is also it's a difficult conversation because there's different possibilities in how it works. It has different manifestations and different dimensions and realities, right? So there's different ways of how you can mess around with it, and there's also different ways of how you can't mess around with it. But besides that, I'm trying to think like of an example as well. I feel like when we hear those facts, like it's non-negotiable because it's just the way it is, but still someone comes around and tries and breaks the law in notion, right? Usually creating a horrific mutation in the result of it or the wake of it, or literally creating a world that just is becoming undone or eats itself apart. So I'm trying to think of other ways to explain it, but I think those are like the three best examples in sci-fi, like, understandable terms. So necromancy, bringing someone to life that actually still is the same person, but usually you just only bring back their flesh, their ghost, or something like that. They can't be their own person living anymore. So or rebirth in general, having a certain notion of how it actually works. Sometimes going in between of certain realms or spaces and places is also a no-no. Merging two beings in certain places is also a no-no. I mean, in terms of like certain scientific things and genetics, you can see that that is like relative to our life, because it would create like mutations, or it would exclude certain experiences that then would just still create certain mutations. Or, yeah, time and fucking about with time. Um, yeah, trying to think of something else, but I think that's it. I think that's all of it. Bottom line, don't go against natural law and order of things because it's set the way it's set to be the way it is for a reason. There's going to be enough room left in every single world and every single dimensional and at every single point in existence for there to be like an understanding or a evolution of consciousness, and for there to be like breaks in actual like limitations of either physics or human consciousness or magics even. Um, like there's a lot of things that we would see as a misconception of natural order and law, but it isn't that. Some things I am even like that about, where it seems like it's something that we shouldn't dare, right? But maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I just don't get it. When it comes to either like, health and genetics, or I don't know, I guess something like in terms of spiritual evolution, that becoming more of the norm in reality, with magic becoming more of a tangible experience, right? Where I think that would be kind of fucking cool. Some people might think like, no, let's not bring in spirits and a bunch of other crazy shit in here. Let's not create humans as this like, experience of possible magics and having it impossible for some other people. That's going to create a whole new story that we shouldn't have or is not necessary. Healing should be done in one way, not in another way, etc., etc. Some things you really just need the opportunity to explore and understand, but all of it needs to still be done within the acceptance of like morality and ethics, that you shouldn't try and break the bank of existence just so you can have more power, I guess, within that existence, um, or just so you can break something irreversible, right? Or something that is like this immovable wall that is gonna stay as like a movable wall, and that's just the way it is. Like if you want to achieve within the world, you can, but certain things aren't that achievement. They are actually just the way they are, and they are always going to stay that way, and there's nothing you can really do about it. Magic slash also science should still explore beyond its capabilities and expand into something that is revered to be like, oh my God, exponential, right? Evolution, development, actual like growth of some sort, but not at the expense of the greater good, not at the expense of actual life or living, not at the expense of like a natural consciousness basis that actually brings us closer to who we are or our enlightenment. Um, yeah. I have some other like opinions behind all of that, but I don't necessarily want to get into it because that would be talking about specific situations and my opinion behind them and going into like a preach land that might not really cover this topic. It might go over to other things that don't like this is related to it, but it's more about those topics than it is like natural order and law. So I hope this made sense. possibly did to a lot of people, probably did to a lot of other people that are woo-woo and into this stuff. I know a few people that are really into natural order and law, but I guess a part of it is also like realizing what it is, and it it's a very under-researched like topic in my opinion. There's certain things that are obvious to be a part of it, but there's other parts of it that is like left to speculation and opinion, and that gray zone can be kind of like the best parts of conscious evolution or like spiritual or scientific achievement, but can also be like a bit of a nosedive slash downfall in some aspects of morality, ethics, or understanding, or just socialization, like how to take things, right? And like health, especially matters of like how to treat certain things that are very basic and primary. Yeah, like either I don't necessarily like want to give these examples, but they're coming through because of, I don't know, it being like a channeling thing, like either, encouraging, discouraging certain things like war and anger and its healthy parameters or unhealthy parameters, or even just like joy and love and health, right? And some people would say that we should have the roller coaster of all emotions, while other people would say like let's eliminate some of these emotions and only have it a certain one way, because that's the true pinnacle of like human evolution, right? Or illness and everything else. If we could remove that, that would be a better life and better way of living. Others would say like if we can figure out how to heal it and take accountability for the healing, right, and it'll work the same way, isn't it better to then take that road? So it is like a debate that I think doesn't really have enough space, because we've just forgotten its importance and we don't really give a shit anymore because there's so many other things to look into and debate and discuss. But natural order and law and like how things really work and should work and could work and shouldn't work and couldn't work, and like what is the whole fucking purpose of this reality and its parameters, and what can be broken to surpass ourselves and what shouldn't be broken, because it'll be a nosedive and open up Pandora's box. Like that's kind of went away, weirdly enough. I mean, some of it is coming across with like AI guess. AI, the possibility of mutating genetics and splicing genetics, quantum computing, especially if it like starts merging with people, and if like people should merge with advanced AI and technology, and if like cyberhumans is a good idea or not. Like, I guess there, right? We were talking about it, but there's also a lot of other aspects to it that we could and should speak on that are more prominent to today, or that can be prominent in other ways to that future, going towards that future with time, that is currently expressing like worries, right? But also delving into the morality, the ethics of it, human nature, life, and like the many probable possibilities behind it, not just this one way we're going, or what seems to be just this one way we're going. So. Yeah, as always, this is just me talking about a perspective. You have your own opinions. Don't ever, get lost in the sauce about it. Even if you think I'm lost in the sauce about it, you don't need to argue. We can all have our opinions and share them and talk about it and, see where we're at and consciously explore these wacky woo-woo, non-woo-woo ideas and see where we go from it instead of, forgetting their thing. Let me know if you ever thought like breaking the rules of either death or illness or time and space or other things like that seemed interesting to you. If you thought it was a good idea, or if you were like, yeah, no, you shouldn't do certain things, and that's just the law of it, and like, don't try and break the bank. Or, if you have a whole different opinion behind it. I don't know, whatever else there might be. I'm just one person, right? With my own perspective and opinion. So this was really fun, although it was very much off the frickin' random day thing. I was not prepared for this, that I feel like this was fun, and I hope to see more of you, either on here or in my Twitch. If you want to check out my link tree, you'll see more of me, and I guess, yeah, that's everything. See you next time. Hope you have a good one. Ta-ta.